Lonely Joe. Governors and party leaders sounding new alarms as more polls point to a Trump second term.
I think it's a legitimate question to say, is this an episode or is this a condition?
Can anything or anyone get Biden to step aside? Call the fun police.
Break it up! Break it up! Break it up!
Cops on the Jersey Shore with a novel way to quiet rowdy teens find their moms and dads. So should parents pay a price for out-of-control kids? And next stop, Paris.
Look at this! The kid's coming back!
Quincy Wilson becomes the youngest ever U.S. male track Olympian. Imagine being just 16 and representing America in the Olympic Games.
Let's go, men's 400.
All right, it's Tuesday, folks, and we come on the air tonight with breaking news, live pictures of the White House, where panic is beginning to set in because it has begun. For the first time, a sitting Democrat is calling on President Biden to suspend his presidential campaign. And now the White House is front and center doing cleanup. Texas Congressman Lloyd Doggett wrote in a statement, "I represent the heart of a congressional district once represented by Lyndon Johnson. He made the painful decision to withdraw. President Biden should do the same." And as you just saw on the Hill, powerful Democratic Congressman James Clyburn stopped short of saying he will tell President Biden to get out of the race, but says he'll be giving President Biden his assessment when he speaks with him soon. But the president and his close-knit group of top advisors are defiant. The pundits are clear, abundantly clear, that he's not going anywhere. Here's his press secretary trying to explain to the American people what happened during the debate on Thursday and why it was a one-off. It was no big deal.
He had a cold and a bad night. I would not see this as an episode. I would see this as what it was and what we believe it to be, which is it was a bad night. And he did, on top of that, he had a cold.
So what do you think? What are your friends saying? Is the public buying it? I mean, the numbers aren't lying. The damage appears to be done. There's new polling from 538. It shows former President Trump rose in polls in several key swing states. That includes Michigan. It includes Wisconsin. In particular, Biden is now trailing former President Trump. Publicly, the message is that Biden is fine, is that there's nothing to see here. But behind the scenes, we are getting drastically different reports. Democrats internally are sounding the alarm. Look at Politico. We've all enabled the situation. Dems turn on Biden's inner sanctum post-debate. Aides say the president is not a pleasant person to be around when he's being briefed. It's very difficult. People are scared S-less of him. You can fill in the blanks. You know what I mean. Axios put in more bluntly, quote, freaking the F out, another one that you can fill in yourself. Turmoil in the White House over Biden. The uncertainty after Thursday is palpable and anxiety is only increasing, a White House official tells Axios. So scared, in fact, that some are using the F word to explain the situation. It's not us, it's them. It appears more and more clear that top Democrats are trying to push Biden out. One more time, again, this is not us. We're quoting other sources. Listen to Kristen Welker of NBC News.
I have spoken to some top Democrats who say that there would actually be relief if he were to step down. And one person said to me, look, everyone's counting out Kamala Harris because right now her poll numbers are below President Biden's. But if she were to be the one to carry this torch into November, there could be a method of reintroducing her to the country.
Reintroducing her, what do you think? Well, new CNN polling shows Kamala Harris actually faring better than Biden in a head-to-head with President Trump, but she's still trailing in that poll. So we're going to talk about her chances with Chris Shaliza in just a moment. But first, Kelly Meyer is live for us in Washington. Hi, Kelly.
Hey there, Elizabeth. Well, we're just getting this word in from a private fundraiser that President Biden is attending, and he admitted in his remarks there that he did not have a good debate. He said in new comments that he wasn't very smart for traveling around the world a couple of times, he says, before the debate. He added there, quote, "I didn't listen to my staff, and then I almost fell asleep on stage." He says, again, it's not an excuse, but an explanation. So that now it seems as though President Biden is shifting the blame to his world travel for his performance at the debate. This may raise more questions than answers, though, because the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, tried to say that he was sick and that it wasn't a good debate either earlier today. She says he is feeling a bit better, but he still has a cold. She was asked if, after the debate, if President Biden was examined by a doctor, which she didn't answer. But when she was asked if he was going to get a cognitive test, she said the medical team has said it is not warranted in this case, not necessary, she said. Here's more from the White House press secretary today.
And he knows how to do the job, not because he says it, because his record proves it. Because for 3.5 years, almost 4 years, the president's record has been unprecedented, delivering for the American people.
So we also confirmed that the White House is having an all-staff meeting tomorrow. One source saying it is just a call with staff on importance of keeping them doing the work and executing the mission. They say nothing else. Another source telling me it's a morale booster after this week, but we will be watching that to see what comes out of it. We also confirmed, Elizabeth, that there is going to be a meeting with President Biden and Democratic governors tomorrow after they had a call, we confirmed on Monday, just between the Democratic governors talking about President Biden and the future here. Elizabeth?
You know, Kelly, before I let you go, we are seeing this fracturing, right? And not necessarily a lot of acknowledgement from the White House that there is this fracturing among the party. They're saying, yes, it was a one-off, it was a slip-up, but we are forging ahead. Are you hearing that from any insiders in the White House, that they acknowledge the fact that the Democratic Party appears to be splintered?
It seems as though they haven't addressed it in that way. What they're trying to do, it seems the White House strategy this week is to try to go about business as usual. And they're also seeming to try to put the president in front of the cameras more, which was interesting because it's the advice of some of the Democrats and some in his own party saying, put him in front of the camera more, have him do press conferences. And we heard today that he will be doing, as they said, a solo press conference next week during NATO. He's going to be traveling to Philadelphia this weekend. He's going to do a sit-down interview later this week. So they're trying to put him out there at the advice of some Democrats, but there is still the other part of the party, as you mentioned, folks calling on him to drop out of the race, talking about VP Harris being the nominee. They haven't really addressed that part of it. It's almost as though they're trying to say, look at this, not that. Elizabeth.
Kelly, excellent reporting. That was sort of my take today when I listened, as you mentioned, to the White House briefing. Let's bring in Chris Cillizza, journalist and senior advisor for DGA Group. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. All right, trouble in paradise. First it was the advisors, now it's the travel schedule. I'm having trouble keeping this straight. Break this down for me. What is your reaction to now this new news that there's another reason why there was a poor performance, aside from the cold, by the way? I believe I forgot that as well.
Yeah, so that's exactly the problem, Elizabeth. Effective messaging is you pick one message and you say that message as much as humanly possible, right? That's why it works usually in campaigns. This is the opposite of that. It was a cold. He was over-prepared. He traveled to Europe and back. Let me just note on that last one. Number one, it's a really bad excuse, generally speaking, because the president of the United States should not say, I almost fell asleep on stage when there are worries that he's too old to do the job. Okay, period. But I did a little bit of fact checking on this. Joe Biden returned from Europe in the G7 June 15th. The debate was June 27th. So that's 12 days. Now, look, I just got back from the West Coast. I will admit I struggled to get up early this morning, but that was one day. 12 days to recover from a trip to Europe? It's a bad political excuse, and it doesn't make practical sense.
Well, you know, whatever happened to good old-fashioned honesty? And I hear you. I haven't traveled anywhere, and I woke up exhausted. The good news is I'm not running to be the president of the United States. I will say, though, you know, I was watching that briefing today, and I wanted to scream at the screen and say, I'm not dumb. I mean, I know I have blonde hair. I'm not dumb. You're lying. You are lying. I know this, and I don't even have to tell you my party. It has nothing to do with it. You are lying to the American people. Why aren't we addressing the elephant in the room?
Right. So the issue here is, right, Joe Biden is old, period. He's 81. We know he's the oldest person ever to be president of the United States. We know all these things. But when you look at him, when you listen to him, and this was prior to the debate, by the way, I've been writing about this for months, right? When you look at him and you listen to him, you know this is not a young man. And that's the thing. People, the White House kept saying, well, you guys write, you and the media write that he's old, but nobody thinks that. Why would you think that? Number one, polling for 18 months has showed a majority of the public, including an almost majority of Democrats, believe Joe Biden is too old to be the president for another 4 years. Number two, just use, politics isn't that complicated. Use your eyes, use your ears, look at that person. And yes, I know Donald Trump is only 3.5 years younger than Joe Biden, but he looked, I'm just saying looked, 15 years younger than Joe Biden at a minimum. That's what's so frustrating, I think. I talk to Democratic donors, I talk to Democratic consultants, and they say, it feels like we are being gaslit. Like what you're seeing and what you're hearing is not actually what's happening. And it just seems so obvious to me. They should say he was bad. Pick a reason why he was bad and go with that one. But don't keep saying it was fine, it was one bad debate, because we get all this reporting that says it's not just one debate. He's had these struggles for months. We just haven't known about.
Okay, before I let you go, I mean, when do we have the white flag? Like, when is it enough? We all thought Thursday was enough. When is it the breaking point? Are we going to wait till September when we have another debate? We're just going to get through the summer and early fall and have another debate, and then we're just going to watch it again?
So that's a great question, and I think a really hard one, candidly, to answer, because it's hard to ever know the tipping point. Things that I would watch. Today was a breaking of sorts. You mentioned Lloyd Doggett, liberal Texas congressman, coming out and saying, look, I love Joe Biden, but it's time to go. There were other rumblings of that happening, mostly former Democratic officials, although I will note Andy Beshear, who's the Democratic governor of Kentucky, said, look, it was a bad debate and there are questions that need to be answered. Look for more elected officials and more prominent elected officials. That's number one. Number two, I think what Biden is trying to do, they're doing a sit down on Friday with ABC, with George Stephanopoulos, I think they're trying to buy time to get him to see how he does in that setting. But again, my issue with all of this is Joe Biden's main issue in the campaign was people thought he was too old. Okay, period. They thought that before the debate. If Joe Biden had been great in the debate, there would have been plenty of people, including people who had not made up their minds, who would say, I still think he's too old. The problem is Joe Biden was not at all good in the debate and looked incredibly old. So that's the thing. 50 plus million people watching something that they already believe play out on television. I just don't know if a good speech or a good interview fundamentally changes that. And I think that's what a lot of down ballot Democrats are worried about, candidly, with him still at the top of the ticket.
Right. And, anecdotally, you and I are both in the news business, and usually stories die, right? They die and then we kind of move on. And the fact of the matter is we are still talking about it. The White House is still talking about it, still changing its narrative. So that tells you that people still very much care. So, Chris Cillizza, thank you so much. You were awesome.
Thanks,
thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, the Jersey Shore is cracking down on some rowdy teens by going after their parents. So, should mom and dad face fines when their teens behave badly? What do you think? Speaking of teens, but not ones that behave badly, the youngest male athlete on the U.S. men's Olympic track team may be too young to vote, but he's not too young to blow through long-standing records. 16-year-old Quincy Wilson's coach will join us on what makes a champion at such a young age.
T-shirt time.
It is 12:10.
It's T-shirt time.
T-shirt time.
It's T-shirt time. Everybody knows it's T-shirt time.
So annoying.
T-shirt time.
Wow, blast from the past. All right, we don't need to tell parents out there that it's summer. Kids are out of school. Sometimes they may or may not get in trouble. But one town along the Jersey Shore has had enough of bad behavior. Margate City is now issuing citations to parents of kids who are unsupervised and, quote, engaging in any behavior that is unlawful, puts their safety at risk, or if they ignore lawful commands from officers attempting to keep them safe. But it's not just Margate City. Towns such as Wildwood, Ocean City in New Jersey are cracking down as well. They're banning backpacks, large bags. They're enforcing curfews that keeps teens off the streets after dark. Ocean City, New Jersey Councilman and, may I point, father of two, Jody Levchuk, joins me now, and why he's backing these ordinances. Jody, thank you so much for joining me. You know, I'm sort of wondering, what was the breaking point? Was it for the Memorial Day violence that you witnessed?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I appreciate your segment that you're doing on this. What was my breaking point on this was a little more than a year ago, where we started to realize that there was some unruly behavior that was starting to collectively happen between groups of juveniles. Mostly juveniles was the common denominator. And we realized as a municipality that there was something that we needed to do about it to curb some of the challenges that we were having from them. And what we did a little over a year ago absolutely helped Ocean City, helped tremendously. This was a little over a year ago. So as you mentioned, we have an 11 p.m. curfew. We have an 8 p.m. backpack rule for all people who are going to be on the boardwalk after 8 p.m. And that's between Memorial Day and Labor Day. And it's helped tremendously.
So how did you get there? You know, did you look at other maybe municipalities, other cities, other townships taking action? How did you come to the conclusion that this was the best solution?
Well, we're Jersey Shore. A lot of people like to think the Jersey Shore is really one place. But what's unique about the Jersey Shore is we're really like 30 different municipalities, each with their own different types of challenges. They're, each have their own different things people like to do. Ocean City is very unique in a way where we are America's greatest family resort. So we get a lot of teenagers, a huge influx of teenagers that come. So, the way we think about the challenge, even though we did look at other municipalities, it's what we looked at the most was what is the best, what's going to be, it's not a one size fits all. What is the best for Ocean City and for our community of what is it we need to do to make our guests feel like they're going to be safe here all the time, no matter where they are. I can tell you as a resident here forever, and somebody who hosts a lot of guests, because I'm a business person as well on the boardwalk here with many, many operations. Our guests feel very safe here. They love it. They love what we did. And we're going to continue to do it. Like I said, this was a little over a year ago. There was some questions to whether we were going to keep that curfew and keep the backpack. And, as a lawmaker here and as a business person, I saw no reason to budge an inch on that at all. It's working. We haven't had any complaints.
Right.
We haven't had any complaints.
Would you think about taking it one step further and ticketing the parents?
I saw what Margate did a little while ago, and you just reminded me of it on your clip. So kudos to Margate. They have their own challenge with teenagers as well. So I understand why they did what they did. And like I said before, it's not a one-size-fit-all situation. So, would we go a step further with holding parents responsible for their kids? I don't think we need to wait for anything to happen for something not to be. I think that should just be a blank check all on its own. Parents should be responsible for their kids. Parents should be held responsible for their kids. And I don't know that we need to draft a law in Ocean City of something special to make that happen.
This might be a loaded question, but do you feel like nowadays maybe parents lack that responsibility?
I do. I think it's for various reasons. I think teenager children are a little harder to deal with when we were teenagers. I would say. I think social media and what all kids have at their fingertips today leads to a lot of that. I think that's a big common denominator in it. They're able to gather. They're able to stir up trouble. When you get two troublemakers in a crowd of 100, it's very simple to get one or two followers. It was a lot harder to do that years ago. So there's different challenges today than there were years ago. So I think parents are learning how to cope with those challenges. And, I don't think it's anything we can't solve. You hear, man, America's lost its way. Kids are going crazy. It's true to an extent. I think overall we got a lot of great kids out there. And I just think that there's a challenge, mainly in New Jersey. There were some laws that were changed a few years back that disengaged our police officers from handling unruly teenagers. And I'd like to see some of those. I'd like to see some of those teeth sharpened again in our state laws. There's nothing we could do about that at a local municipality. So that's why we had to come up with workarounds like what we just talked about. But I would love to see a little more teeth from the state level back into our policing. I think enough is enough already. I think a lot of people have realized that was, I like to call it a social experiment gone wrong.
Well, Jody, I'm grateful for you. You're doing a social experiment. You've been very successful. Like you said, there's a lot of great kids out there. And you know what? Boundaries never hurt anybody of any age. So, Jody, thank you so much for joining us. Like you said,
absolutely not. And we want people to enjoy their vacation in Ocean City. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Love it.
Have a great night.
Have a great night. Thank you. Coming up, President Biden spent a week, as you know, preparing for his debate. Turned out really not to go so well. Now his aides are scrambling to get him back out in public every day. But is it enough for you, the voter? Welcome back. Following President Biden's disastrous debate performance, the administration is really trying to quell fears that he is up to another 4 years. Quite the contrary, actually. The White House promised the president is going to get in front of the cameras even more than he has in just the past 24 hours. Here's what she said.
We want to turn the page on this. And we want to turn the page for the American people as well, because we know that they need to see him out there. He's going to continue to be out there. He has been. And we understand how important that is. And so we're going to turn the page. We're going to get out there across the country. Americans are going to see him for themselves. And I think that's going to be very important as well.
Important because you're running to be the leader of the free world. They've decided to start with a taped sit-down interview with ABC News with George Stephanopoulos. It is scheduled to air at the end of a holiday week, arguably the busiest time of year, right, on Sunday. And this is the same George Stephanopoulos who had this to say about former President Trump.
Do we want to be represented, to be led for the first time in history by a convicted felon? The scale of the abnormality is so staggering that it can actually become numbing.
The first president ever, and I think you could just stop and end it right there, the first president ever who's been indicted and impeached for trying to overturn an election. So journalist or commentator, founding editor of Mediaite and NewsNation contributor Colby Hall joins us now. Colby, a lot to break down there. I want to start with the timing of the interview, the person selected to do the interview. The interview is not going to be live. Your take on all of these things.
Well, it's fascinating. And if you want to pick who's the safest sort of political media figure for the Biden administration to select, George Stephanopoulos, former operative under the Bill Clinton administration, is sort of an obvious choice. Now, I think George Stephanopoulos has mostly acquitted himself and been a fair arbiter, and he's been very vocal in his criticism for Trump, which raises certain eyebrows. But the fact that the Joe Biden is going to speak with him in a taped interview, probably will be taped on Thursday, and then we'll see the first teasers on Friday, then the full interview on Sunday. You know, that's a long ways away. The story is very fluid. The stuff that's said on that interview on Thursday may not be even relevant by how quickly this story is moving. So, yeah, the media angle to this entire sort of debacle is a fascinating thing to watch sort of unfold in real time.
Absolutely fascinating. I was thinking today, have we all just collectively lowered our standards? I mean, that's what I'm curious. This is arguably the most powerful position in the world, and we continue to lower the bar. I was watching the White House press briefing, and a lot of questions. You know, people were saying, I saw the president with his son, Hunter Biden. You know, is he sitting in very important meetings? So I'm curious as to who is this inner circle. It seems to be a very small group of people who are controlling, in theory, all of us. What is your take on that?
You know, I don't know exactly who his inner circle is. Depending upon who you listen to, you could hear that Barack Obama is very close to Joe in these sorts of decisions. And you also hear reports that, you know, Barack Obama has privately said that he doesn't have it anymore. Hillary Clinton also is a questionable person. I really think I happen to think that I don't buy the sort of evil genius Joe Biden. I think that you can argue with a lot of his policies, but I think he's largely a good-natured religious man who's just been in the business way too long. And I think he's clearly in cognitive decline. I think he's rallying the troops and circling the wagons with his family members. I think it's really his inner circle is Jill Biden and Hunter Biden, which is ironic because Hunter has been the guy that's shown the worst judgment over the last 5 to 10 years. But I think Hunter and Joe, he's a proud dad and he loves him. I think mostly this is a pretty sad thing. And right now the media is not doing Joe Biden any favors by basically saying the emperor's got no clothes, calling what they see, what everyone can see, that he can't keep a train of thought and he's in clear cognitive decline.
I would agree with you. I wouldn't say, and I think that there is, no one making him the villain, right? I agree with you. He's had this long career. I lived in D.C. for almost 10 years, and I remember him walking up and down the halls, very jovial, very likable, very moderate, just not the same person who I'm witnessing today. That would be my point, right? Not necessarily, 100%. As I said, making him the villain. But if you look at the former president and the current president on the campaign trail, we ran some numbers here. So number of interviews that they've done since May, it looks like the former president Donald Trump has done about double. If you look at speeches, President Biden has made a few more, but I think we're not distinguishing what is necessarily a teleprompter and what's not. You look at the rallies, former President Trump, we can anticipate 3 times the rallies. And then if you look at fundraisers, they're sort of neck and neck. But you have to pull ahead of your opponent, right? If you are vying for the office, you want to be way ahead in all of these categories. It's arguably July. He's got to get going.
Right. And I will say his critics and conservative media have been calling this out for some time, and I think they feel validated. I sort of give a little bit of grace to the White House communications team because their job is spin. Their job is to highly produce the president, and that's not just the Biden administration. That's every administration. However, this narrative that he's been hiding from the press is clear as day. And if you're going to have a really sort of disastrous debate outing and you want to show that he's still got his wits about him, the first thing you do is you put him out in front of a bunch of reporters and have him push back, fact check, and show that he's still got it. The fact that they've not done that, to me, I think is the most damning. You can see that he's only done 34 solo press conferences. That probably includes a lot of tightly produced, pre-produced questions to reporters. He to Trump's credit, he loved the attention. He took questions every time he walked out to the helicopter. He insulted reporters. He said a lot of crazy things. He was never not entertaining. And you could argue that he's, sort of annoying if you don't like him, but at least he engaged. And the fact that Biden's not engaging just raises more eyebrows of what's really going on. And I think, honestly, the next 24 to 48 hours, you're hearing a lot of media people say the dam is breaking. And the media is actually, even left-leaning media outlets are sort of reporting what they're seeing. So I think it's a weird thing where the media are actually putting pressure on Biden to drop out and not covering for him, which is a big development.
Yeah, I think that's valid, Colby. I think the water, the pressure, there has to be a white flag eventually because we have these conversations internally, editorially. We don't necessarily see the trajectory changing, right? Because especially if he's doing an interview at the end of the week, we're still going to be talking about it at the end of the week. So, Colby, thank you for your expertise tonight. We will watch as this story plays out together, right? What a time to be alive. Appreciate you.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth.
Coming up after the break, prosecutors in New York agreed to delay Trump's sentencing. Did you hear this? This is big news after his big victory at the Supreme Court. Is Trump's best strategy moving forward to really do nothing and just let the Biden campaign continue to make these stumbles? We'll discuss. Stay with us. His sentencing in the New York hush money case until September 18th. If, quote, it is still necessary. It was originally set for next week. That's just days before the RNC. Judge Merchan's decision follows a Supreme Court ruling that grants all presidents substantial immunity for official acts, having a ripple in each of the former president's 4 criminal cases that we have followed extensively. This is a time when the media believed that Trump would be losing the support of his party. The developments are something really no one predicted a year ago.
So many Republicans who voted for Trump, they liked his policies, but are just exhausted by it all.
But he loses voters in Wisconsin. He loses voters in Michigan. He loses voters in Pennsylvania. He loses voters in Atlanta. He loses swing voters.
And with other potential indictments coming, other trials potentially coming down the pike, I can't imagine the numbers you just mentioned, John, heading in the right direction for Trump and the Republican Party when it comes to a general election campaign.
Is he really doing that poorly? Because as we have learned with each indictment, the former president just saw a bump in polls, which brings us to today as the White House now deals with questions surrounding President Biden's health, his capability, his future. What should the former president be doing, if anything, ahead of the convention? Does he need to? With us now, Anita Kumar, Politico's managing editor and former White House reporter, and Lee Carter, pollster and president and partner at Maslansky Partners. I'm grateful for you both joining us. You know, Anita, I want to start with you. It's not your first rodeo, right? You've covered a lot of administrations. Your perspective of Trump's reaction post-debate in just these past few days.
Yeah, I mean, he did exactly what we thought he would do, which is just kind of lean into what President Biden's, performance was like. But he really didn't need to do much there, right? Because people, Democrats, media were already talking about that. And then he got his own good news, as you mentioned. And so he's seen President Biden have a bad few days, and he's seen himself have a good few days. I mean, he's really leaning into a couple things with his legal cases. One, he's always said he enjoyed some immunity, and the Supreme Court said they agreed. And he's also wanted to delay. That has been his tactic. And he's able to do that now. So he really did score a couple of victories, as you mentioned. And he's going into this, holiday weekend pretty well.
You know, Lee, I heard Anita mention lean in a couple times. And I think my question, and you're no stranger to strategy, right? And I was anticipating a more aggressive response. Yes, we're seeing Trump social, and if you disagree, let me know. I was anticipating him to be more intense in his criticism of Biden. I've seen it on social media a few times. Would you say he's being restrained, or is that just my interpretation?
I would say to a certain extent he's being restrained. I think he's saying, he's saying that Joe Biden can actually communicate what he wants him to communicate better than he can himself. And so what we're seeing on his social media and what he's putting out there is a lot of retweets of key moments in the debate that made people question how Joe Biden was performing. I think, there's been a fair number of memes and all of that. So he's letting Joe Biden speak for himself right now. And what Joe Biden's saying to the American people isn't allaying any fears. And so I don't think Donald Trump does have to say much in this moment. And I think he should use this moment to start preparing for a pivot just in case Joe Biden does step out, because there is a chance, and we're seeing some polling that suggests it might not be as easy for Donald Trump should Joe Biden step away as we once thought.
Well, and I think that really leads me to my next question, Anita, if there is a pivot, because the narrative that we're seeing now from the White House is stay the course. We're going to get him out there more. As I've mentioned, you've witnessed a lot of campaigns. Do you think that narrative is going to continue to work? Could we see a pivot, maybe even in the next couple of weeks?
Well, obviously, President Biden needs to sort of figure out what he wants to do, right? He's got a whole plan that he needs to make on television, talking to the public. President Biden now is going to be focused on the Republican convention, which is coming up soon. We thought he was going to be sentenced before that, and now that's not happening. So he's got some time here to play with, really. He's able to go out and campaign as he wants to. We just didn't know what the sentencing would look like, so we didn't know how he would be constrained. He is able now to have his rallies that he wants to have, to, go into this convention feeling a little bit better than he might have. And to do the summer that he expected, we will have some hearings. There will be hearings. But he really has the freedom now to have the next few months to really campaign. And I think you'll see him do that and make a plan for the next several months.
All right, Lee, on that note, if we do anticipate him to be campaigning, I want to put up a couple numbers for you. These are from USA Today. It says Democrats looking to replace Biden right around 41%. And if you look at that next to the GOP polling, that's right around 14%. And I think as a candidate, you don't want any percent, right? But 14 is better than 41. Going over the next couple months, I'm sort of asking the same question as I did with Anita. I mean, is this the right path forward?
It's really, really fair question. I think most American people are asking it right now. I saw another poll today that suggested that 75% of Democrats believe that someone other than Joe Biden can defeat Donald Trump. So Biden's main argument about staying in, which is he is the one that can do it, isn't passing muster with his supporters. And I think it's going to be really, really telling how the next 2 days play out, because he has been trying to turn the page. He did the event in North Carolina the day after the debate. I think he hoped that look, I'm not a young man message was going to work. I think he hoped going out, doing a fundraiser over the weekend was going to work. It did not allow him to turn the page. No one is leaving this narrative behind. Not his supporters, not his enemies, no one. Everyone is really wondering what is going on. The question's being asked over and over again, who's really running the White House? And he hasn't given us what we need as an American people to feel confident that he's able to do it. So saying nothing, this isn't about a diagnosis. People have really, really valid questions, really important concerns, and he needs to be out there. When you hear in the White House briefing, she says he's going to be out there. It can't just be scripted 4-minute speeches. It has to be longer, interactive, spontaneous events where people see him in action, because a lot of people have really valid and important questions. I did a focus group the night of the debate. Those folks who supported Joe Biden in the beginning of the debate were really devastated by his performance. They lost confidence in him. They want to hear from him. And so he's got a big, big task ahead of him.
Right. If you go, if you do an interview, if you do a live interview with someone who you don't like, that shows us that you're capable to handle everything. And we're just not seeing that, right? We're sort of seeing this spaghetti being thrown against the wall. Anita Lee, thank you so much for joining us. Really interesting conversation. And I think we all can agree that, regardless of what happens, we will continue to be surprised with this election cycle. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When we come back, imagine being the youngest American to ever qualify for the men's Olympic track team. When we return, 16-year-old Quincy Wilson's coach is here to tell us how special this young man is and how he is getting ready to go to Paris. Trust me, you're going to love this story. A boy from Maryland who loves to run is now the youngest male to join the U.S. Olympic track team. USA Today writes 16-year-old track phenom Quincy Wilson makes Team USA for Paris Olympics. And a phenom he is. Wilson broke the U.S. high school record. He blew through the world under-18 record last held in 1982. This is him after the big moment.
Today, I just came out here, gave everything I had. I knew that last 100 was going to be hard. I've been studying these guys. Last year I was in the stands watching them, so I'm really out here now, and I'm competing with them, so I'm so thankful to be in this moment.
Amazing, right? Quincy Wilson's coach at Bullis School in Maryland. Joe Lee joins me now. Joe, when did you know that Quincy was just downright special?
I probably knew that when I first met him. And when you meet him, he's just such a mannerable, kind, respectful young man. I mean, you know that there's a special thing inside of him, and it has nothing to do with athletics. He's a straight A student. He won the Principals Award this year, and his freshman year, last year, he won the Joy of Living Award. So when you do all those kind of things, plus the amazing things he's done on the track, then he's pretty special pretty early.
Yeah, you can just see it in his smile. All right, so Paris is coming up. What is he doing to prepare? I mean, how are you walking through him? This is such a moment that he is experiencing.
Yeah, we're still kind of on cloud nine over here. It's still been, less than 48 hours since we got the word. The Olympic Committee called us up on Sunday night, and, we got the news that because it was possible that he was not selected, even though he made the final, which was crazy. So we're already at it. We've been at practice for the past couple of days, and we're not going to change much. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But it's really, as a coach, I'm proud of it, and we're happy and we're preparing. But as a track fan, I'm like, what in the world is going on? There's a high school sophomore that is breaking records and making Olympic finals with like grown-ups. He literally was twice, the person who was 2 lanes ahead of him was twice his age. He was 32. So pretty cool story for us all to enjoy. But yeah, we're living the dream right now, and we're glad it's going to keep going to Paris.
You know, before I let you go, can you just relive that moment for me when I think maybe if I read it correctly, you got the phone call first, and then you notified him? I mean, walk me through just that moment. What were you feeling?
Yeah, so the Olympic Committee, they call you up. They call the coach first, and so we were expecting a call at 9:00 Eastern time, and 9:00 passed, and then 9:15 passed, and 9:30, and then I'm starting to get a little nervous, like, well, what's going on here? So finally, I guess closer to 11:00, they made the call and let me know that he has been selected for the Olympic team, and of course, he's the youngest ever to do that, and it's surreal because it's arguably the most difficult event in track and field, the 400. So to have someone so young, and he's not really imposing in stature, you can see in that picture right there, he's dwarfed by some of the other guys, but his heart is unmatched.
Wow.
So anyway, so when they call, I got the call, I immediately called him, but we have a great relationship. We joke all the time, but when it's time to get serious, obviously we do. So I saw it as an opportunity to joke with him a little bit. So I said, hey, got the call from the Olympic Committee, and I just have some bad news. And I said, unfortunately, you're going to have to go to Paris and represent Team USA. He's like, oh my God. So he's running around his room, just doing what a teenager would do. And it was a great experience. So we're all proud, and can't say enough good things about him. He's a great young man.
Well, you know what? We are cheering for you. We are cheering for Quincy. Like you said, his smile just is very much infectious. We wish you the very, very best, and we know that you guys are going to take it all. So best of luck to you, and don't forget about us on your journey, Joe. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Elizabeth. We appreciate it.
And we thank you for joining us on Balance tonight. Quite a week so far. We have much more news ahead. Chris Cuomo starts right now.